Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Mark. This is just a section of the YouTube channel I'm putting together called On Assignment Conversations. It's an idea I've had for a while actually, and today that comes to light in my first conversation with a photographer, Cameron Jones Manley. It's funny. I'm in the gallery studio space 5 days a week. You never know who's going to walk through the door. And I think it was just last week, Cameron walked through the door and I never met him before. And he said to me, "Do you shoot?" And I said, "Yeah, man, I just shoot street stuff, for gigs, festivals, nothing major. What about you, Cameron?" And he replied with, "Yeah, man, I shoot too. I've just done 6 war zones in 6 months." So you never know who's going to walk through the door. And this is a beautiful conversation. Cameron's absolutely brand spanking new to the industry, as is this podcast, studio, space, conversation area. Um, so let's get into it. Cameron.
Nice to meet you.
Well, well done.
Nice.
No, it's amazing, man. So let's get into it. So I've just said that you're brand new to the industry, and if I remember rightly, you've only had a camera for 7 months. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, 7 months. I was studying fashion in college, and sort of picked up a camera then about 7 months ago, and yeah,
It's incredible, the story and the images that I've seen so far. Maybe we'll chuck a couple up as we're, if that's okay with you.
nice.
We'll
Yeah, definitely.
we'll chuck some images up as the podcast or conversation goes on. Now, when people are new to the photography world, they think they need a body of work or a project or a subject or a thing that they're associated with or a style. And sometimes they really struggle on that. 7 months ago, you woke up and said, "I want a camera," bought a camera, and chose the subject war or post war. Why?
So, I was studying fashion in Bristol. I wanted to photograph some of the clothes I'd made, so I picked up an old film camera, and sort of went from there and went down learning about street photography and like the documentary style that lots of people are familiar with. But it also, my grandfather had lots of National Geographic books around the house when we were younger, and it was a lot of this sort of Stephen Curry, is it
Yeah.
the documentary traveling through India, and I'd always been sort of fascinated with that, and so I started shooting streets and stuff, and then I was introduced to Don McCullen. That was my introduction, which I can imagine for a lot of war photographers it is. Watched the film, sort of looked into his body of work, and I was hooked from there. To be honest with you, I think war for me captures the rawest forms of humanity and the darkest and deepest parts of where we can go to as humans, and photographing that was important for me.
So, like you just said, Don McCullen, super well popular, famous, internationally known war photographer.
Yeah.
I would imagine he sold tens of thousands, I don't know, if not millions of books, maybe over the course of his career. But not everyone, I know it inspires people to go out and shoot, but not actually to do what he does or attempt to do what he does. Where do you start with it? And I mean, um, so you've woke up one morning and you've had the idea of going somewhere. Like, where do you start? The plane ticket? Is it a quick Google search? Am I allowed in? Do I need a pass, a visa? Where do you, right at the very beginning, you've had the thought, what happens next?
So for me, I just like the preface. I've done a bit of traveling beforehand, so I did a little bit about Europe and stuff like that. So when it comes to planning a trip, for me, I usually start at figuring out the story, where I want to photograph, why I want to photograph there. For me, having the reason of why is the biggest reason. Why am I here? And then I'll sort of look into. So I'll go on the government website of wherever I'm going to. I look at the travel restrictions imposed by the UK. I'll still go anyway, but it sort of gives you a rough idea of what may be going on in that place, some of the dangers that lay ahead. Then you're looking at visa processes. So for Iraq, for example, that was my first trip. I had looked into it, and luckily it was visa on arrival, which was perfect for me. So first step then is looking for plane tickets. So I use an app called Skyscanner. It is the cheapest place you'll find plane tickets. So yeah, sort of booking them. A lot of Middle Eastern flights, which is a lot of the wars and conflicts I've covered are Middle Eastern. You're stopping in Turkey, so I'm booking that, making sure I have everything. Also, a big thing I like to have is be aware of numbers and addresses for embassies and safe points. So don't just jump into doing a war, but make sure if you are going to do it, you have every precaution taken up so you know where to go if stuff goes wrong, making sure I have eSIM so I can contact people, making sure all these safety measures are set in place. And when I feel confident, then I'm ready to go, yeah.
Um, we probably should point out that it's a bit of a do not try this at home scenario for most people because well, we'll go into it, but yeah, we're not recommending you do it, but if that's your thing, then get up and go. I guess I don't know.
Yeah.
We'll go into it, and people can make up their own mind. So yeah, maybe I should have said that at the beginning. Don't try this at home. Cameron is one of a kind. You've just said that Iraq was your first go-to. Um, is that just because of the name? It was the most popular place. When we think of Iraq, we just always think of war. That's us in the West, being in the UK. Why Iraq?
So Iraq for me was about building, sort of introducing myself into the idea of conflict and war by steps and figuring out a process where right now, as a pretty much a beginner in the space of war journalism, let's start off somewhere that has activity, has the remnants of the damage, but I'm not pushing myself into somewhere that I'm super uncomfortable with. So for me, it was going, I would love to jump into Ukraine right now, but let's push myself slowly into that. So when I'm researching different wars, I'm thinking, right, which ones are becoming a bit of a more of a stabilized place to visit and photograph. And for me, Iraq was pretty good in that sense because it had recently came out of its war with ISIS. Obviously, American and British troops had been there for a long time, and we were sort of seeing the end of that conflict. So for me, I knew going into Iraq, the threat is there, but the threat is minimal in comparison to the immediate threat of being somewhere like Ukraine. Obviously, you still have the kidnapping threat, the hostage taking, and all that gory stuff out in the Middle East. But generally, going into it, that was sort of my idea, was let's just build myself into it.
So today, are you able just to get a direct flight into Iraq?
No, not from the UK. No, so you generally 90% of flights into Iraq will stop in Turkey. Turkey's a pretty big hub for traveling anywhere into the Middle East. So a lot of the wars and stuff I've done, every single one of them actually stopped in Turkey.
But you can fly. Well, I'm saying, so although you've gone stop here, stop there, there are still planes flying into Iraq. You haven't crossed the border on foot.
Not for this one, no.
Not in Iraq.
No, Iraq was a direct flight. We landed directly into Baghdad airport and got picked up. Yeah.
And when you land somewhere like that, does it feel? I know you've probably done loads of airports, as have I, and most people watching this going on holiday and stuff like that. Is it duty free? Does it feel a bit different? Do you know what I mean? Like, are the guys there with the taxis? Is it, or are you just on your own? I don't know. What's it like?
It is different. It was probably the most unique type of airport experience for me because you land in there and no, there wasn't really like a duty free or anything that I saw anyway in Baghdad when we were leaving the plane. But it was a very different experience for me. I was sort of the only white Western person on the plane for a starter, and going into the airport. Then it was my first time doing a sort of, well, I'd done it previously in India, but it was a totally different experience. This was, and I was in this room with a lot of Iraqi and Middle Eastern people waiting for my visa to be approved. And
are you obviously standing out like a sore thumb in this location that you've landed in? Are you pulled into a room Are they querying why you're there? Can't imagine many tourists go there on a holiday.
No, they don't. There was a lot, to be honest with you, there was a few boys from Bradford, which made
Really?
yeah, that really helped the experience a lot. I was super nervous, to be honest with you. But as we'll talk about later, Syria, that was totally different. That was in a room and stuff. But for Iraq, they were seeing the beginning of the influx of tourists and sort of people who wanted to explore the history of Iraq. So they were more prepared for tourism. So for their experience, particularly their experience, it was pretty smooth sailing.
And had you arranged to meet someone there, a guide? I don't know,
Yeah.
what is it? A guide, a
fix-
tour guide?
Yeah, I had a fixer slash guide for the
They call them fixers.
yeah, in
Okay.
journalism term, a fixer would be someone that sort of would be your translator, your driver, take you to places you want to go and stuff like that.
And
Yeah.
how would you have met them beforehand?
So I had my first experience with sort of doing this post-war work and planning was a lot of it, to be honest with you, was through watching YouTube videos. I'd watched some videos of people who've gone and traveled to the Middle East, and I'd found a guy who someone I'd been watching and been in contact with had used for their trip. And for a lot going forward, I think there is a website. I think it's called World Fixers, where you can connect yourself with different journalists, fixers and stuff like that. But for that one, I'd used a guy I met online.
Okay. Okay. Stepping away then from Iraq a minute.
Yeah.
You mentioned Syria and Ukraine. So Iraq now is welcoming tourists in. There are hotels. There are fixers if need be, translators, drivers. It ain't too sketchy, I'm imagining. I'm sure you're looked at as people are wondering why you're there. But then if we go, where did you go after Iraq then? What was your next location?
My next location was Ukraine, but the first time in Ukraine was totally different to the second, totally different. But yeah, Ukraine the second.
Okay, so you've gone to Ukraine. Again, was it a similar scenario? I know that's an active war zone. I bet you can get a flight into Ukraine. What's the logistics surrounding Ukraine, and can we talk about it?
Of course, yeah. So Ukraine was a totally different ball game of going there. So as a lot of people will be aware, the majority of the fighting in Ukraine is sort of to the southeast and the south of the country. Flights are a no-go. So for me, it was I need to get myself a bus to London and then a flight to Poland. I think I landed in Krakow. And then you start then the long process of buses and trains. So it's a bus to Lviv, and then a bus to Kiev, and then a train down to Kharkiv or wherever you're sort of going in. But it takes a day or two of bus traveling or train travel.
And again, a fixer.
No, for Ukraine I didn't. So I'd just like to add, with Iraq, just quickly going back on it, Iraq is the dangers in Iraq and Ukraine are different dangers. For Iraq, more of the danger for me was it's not the immediate threat of being shot. It's am I going to be driving down a road and someone's going to kidnap me? Or we drove through the desert going through Mosul, which is ISIS territory over there. And if someone sees the car, am I going to get taken up into the mountains and so on? But for Ukraine, the threat is a little bit different. The threat is more so, unless you're on the front line or you're close to the proximity of the front line, it's pretty hard to tell you're in a war zone, which is fascinating.
Really?
Totally fascinating, yeah. If you could be, for example, I was in Kramatorsk, for example. You can drive an hour or two north of that, and you would not be able to tell you're in a war zone. It's totally fascinating.
Well, my next question was going to be, when you go into places like this, especially when it's an active war zone,
Yeah.
you know, what's the feeling like, you know? But you've just said then it just felt Ukraine just felt pretty normal-ish. Unless you're on the front line, you wouldn't really know in what way. So people are still working, the coffee shops are open, the restaurants are still, operating. Is that the case there? Yeah.
Yeah, so with Ukraine, the first time, well, the first and second time were totally different experiences. So when you sort of come into the country and you're going through Lviv and all these areas in Kiev, it's pretty hard to tell you're in a war zone. You hear the sirens. That's obviously the biggest giveaway. But if you're staying in the main city of Kiev, it's pretty hard to see it until you go out to Bucha, Irpin, and the surrounding areas. But second time going down to the Donbass, to Kramatorsk, that was scary. We were, I was solo, rented an apartment, and we were getting bombed every 3 to 4 hours, and they were pretty close. That was scary. Yeah.
All right. So how do you go about renting an apartment in somewhere like Ukraine, which is an active war zone? I can't imagine it's just an Airbnb, is it?
So I was in just a little lead into the story. I was in Kharkiv. I went to the front lines, and a woman I met there who was a journalist, who I'd like to say a massive thank you to her. She was very, very kind. She said to me when we were on the front lines, "You're going to Kramatorsk. Do not stay in a hotel. If they find out you're a journalist and you're in a hotel, they're probably going to target you, and you're going to die." There was a journalist from North Wales who worked for Reuters, who was in the same village, I believe, in Kramatorsk or Sloviansk, in that sort of area, and he was killed, unfortunately, working for Reuters. So you have to. There's an app called OEX, I believe, and it's sort of you have to figure out where you're staying, and it puts you in contact with people, and you meet the guy. So it's sort of like Airbnb, but it's yeah.
So you've got into Ukraine on your own. For like people watching this who struggle with I don't know, motivation, being inspired. Like, I don't know, even know what I want to ask you, but you like, where's that fire? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
especially on your own, like you've not gone with it. So as far as I'm aware, you don't have any military experience.
No.
You are not a journalist as such. You weren't a journalist.
No, it's not, no.
You're brand new with a camera, wanting to explore. I'm just getting my head around. I know how old are you?
I'm 23.
So you haven't got much fear. You're a nipper. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Me as a 41-year-old now in a family wouldn't think twice. I worry about going down a side street in Newport. Do you know what I mean? But to go on your own with no military background, I'm going to dare say no preparation really to be in a war zone.
Not at the start, no. It's only now.
So, well, I'm going to ask you again, why, and, why, and when you're in this, you just said then we're getting bombed every couple of hours, and they're quite close. What, kilometers? You can hear things, see smoke, fire. What are we talking,
Yeah, so for the first start of it, the part of the question, I've always been 100% in everything I do. I've always given, like, if I do something, I become sort of obsessed with it, and I just obsess and do it as much as I can. So for me, finding the motivation was pretty easy. As soon as I figured out I enjoy doing this and I feel passionate about it, it was sort of just like, I'm more excited than the nerves just falls away when you're excited. So finding the motivation was easy. What was the second part of the question? Sorry.
I think it was just why. I'm asking you about, you're in a active war zone. You said we're being bombed every 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah.
Like how? I mean, are they kilometers?
Yeah.
Are you? God, I can't imagine it.
So in Kramatorsk, they were close. Yeah. Up in Kharkiv and to the north. You could hear them, you could sort of feel something now and again, a little bit of a tremor, but generally they weren't too close. But Kramatorsk, which I just need to add, Kramatorsk is a city in the Donbass where the majority of the fighting is in Ukraine, and that is a few kilometers, not far at all. I think the next is Pokrovsk, and that is the front line basically. So it's not far in the scheme of things. It's not far at all. So yeah, they're close. They're close. You could be here in a hotel and a few kilometers away, standing on the balcony. Even yeah.
And how? Where's? Are you in two minds? You're thinking, well, I shouldn't be here, or I don't want to be here, as opposed to where did that just land? Let me grab my camera. Do you know what I mean? What what's that feeling like?
Both. I get both of them. I know I'm there for a purpose, and I know I'm there to tell the world what's going on, or at least try. But for example, I can remember the one night being led in bed. It was my first night in Kramatorsk. Sat, fallen asleep in my room, and I heard an explosion and a missile land a few kilometers away. And I can just remember waking up in basically like a cold sweat, grabbing my clothes and just checking on to try and get some type of cover, and then having to calm myself down and think, I'm gonna be okay. I'll be all right. So yeah, a lot of the time, especially there, that was scary. A lot of the time, I was like, I want to go, but I just fought it, and I was like, just calm myself down. I need to be here. I got to push through this, and it became normal after a while. Almost, it became sort of like you just get used to the sound of missiles, and you just there's another one.
Oh, that's crazy. So how long were you? How long were you there for? You've been twice to Ukraine.
Yeah.
How long were you there for first time, and how long were you there for second time?
The first time wasn't too long. I think it was only about 7 days. It was a pretty short trip. And sort of dipping my toes into the water of what was going on out there. The second was a bit longer. I think it was a couple of weeks. Yeah, and it was like at least a week in Kramatorsk, which might add, I am self-funded. So a lot of it is I'd love to stay there longer, but unfortunately at the minute, it's sort of hard to do that. But yeah, over a week.
And well, let's go into that then. So you're self-funded. What does it? What are we talking cost-wise to stay in an apartment in Ukraine today? I mean,
Super cheap.
Really?
Ukraine is the cheapest one I've done. I think I did 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks there. I could do it for about 450, 500 quid.
Yeah. Well, I guess they're
Total cost.
I guess the people that own it are desperate for money.
Yeah.
I mean, they're not. I don't know what the situation is over there. So yeah, they can let it go. I don't know where you were in this block of apartments. Were they all lived in? Was it a bit derelict? I mean,
Yeah, there wasn't many people there at all. No, there wasn't.
and do you stay in the same place for that amount of time? Are you worried? That if you're in the same place for too long, you start raising awareness of you being there and the risk. The stats are getting lower now that I'm in this place for a bit too long. I don't know. Is that a thing?
It is kind of, to be honest with you, it is kind of. I speak to a lot of journalists when I'm out there, and I was speaking to a woman who worked for National Geographic who was doing more stuff, and she said it's potluck, total potluck. You pick an apartment and you stay there, and you cross your fingers that it doesn't land.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't matter if you're there for 24 hours or 24 days. If you're being hit, you're being hit, I guess, yeah.
Hotels are a no-go. I would say if you are going to go there and you're going to go to the south, don't stay in hotels, because especially if you are, like now, I am an accredited journalist, finally. So there is a bit more above my head, and there is a bit more at risk from that point of view. But yeah, it's...
How do the locals react to you being there? Do they just think you're some... I don't know. I mean, and how often are you being asked, are you media? Like, where's that line? I mean, you're out with... They clearly see you're not from there. You're dressed different, you look different, you've got the camera in your hand, so you're there for a purpose.
Yeah.
Are they welcoming? Are they, do they not want to be on camera? I mean, what goes on there?
I have found most of the reactions I've got to me being in a conflict zone totally depends on the political situation of the country. So, for example, I was not welcomed at all in Lebanon while they were at war with Israel.
And that's because you're British.
British funding Israel. A lot of them did not want me to be there. But for example, Ukraine, they were all welcoming because we're sort of helping them out. So I was really welcome there. And Syria and Iraq, they were really nice to me, to be honest with you, luckily.
When you get into Ukraine, you went solo. How do you then link up? Is it easy to link up with other photographers or journalists? I guess you'd all stand out with the camera. And I mean, what are you even wearing? Is there a bulletproof vest? Is there a helmet? Like what goes on in these places,
So for the meeting people part, I'm going to just tell a little quick story which is a really funny story, but really cool of how I got in with people down there. So one day I woke up at my house and there was a guy sweeping our chimney. I spoke to him. He said, "What do you do?" I said, "Studying photojournalism, documentary stuff." He said, "My wife used to do war journalism. Put me in contact with a guy who then put me in contact with a man called Paul Conroy. And if there's not a lot of people out there who know who he is, there was a few Netflix massive films made about him. He was the photographer for a woman called Marie Colvin who died in Syria by the Assad regime in the 2010s. And he was working out in Ukraine at the time. And through those guys, I sort of met people. They put me in contact with people. There's media hubs in every one of the cities as well. So like Kharkiv or Kiev, a lot of them have media hubs where you can go to. They put you in a WhatsApp chat. They'll do briefings and you go there and you sort of meet people that way. And sort of wearing the right clothing. A lot of these places, especially, this is the good thing about Ukraine, those media hubs do offer bulletproof vests and helmets and stuff. Luckily, I got my own because I prefer, just in case I'm in bed one night and they invade where I am, I'd prefer to just be able to put it on if our town's getting invaded by Russia. But yeah, it's a bulletproof vest and a med kit with some tourniquets.
Yeah, well, we'll come on to that. We'll come on to that in a minute. So when you walk into this hub as a newbie, is it a bit daunting? I mean, like, there must be other journalists, like you said, Reuters, National Geographic, experts in their field, massive careers, and then you just picked up a camera 3 months previous going, yeah, I fancy it as well, man. I want to be here. Any questions asked, or are they just letting you get on?
They always look really suspiciously at me. I've been with CNN, the major American network in Syria. I've been with Reuters, loads of AFP, lots of big photography agencies and stuff that people have been out on assignment when I've been there, and they always look at me like I'm a weirdo. They're like, "Why are you here?" I remember one guy who had worked for AFP, the amateur press, for a long time, did the Kosovo War. He was in Ukraine doing evacs with civilians, and he said, "How long have you been doing this?" I said, "A few months. I just study it and wanted to give it a go." And he was like, "Why are you here? This is just so dangerous. Why?" And everyone is the same. Why? They look at you bewildered.
The journalists.
Yeah.
But for the same reason they are there, though.
Yeah.
Except you're not getting paid by a big organisation to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was...
it's a weird one.
Yeah, I do wonder. So they're almost worried for you.
Yeah.
You just touched up on something called a tourniquet, which I'd never heard of before, but I wouldn't have because I'm not doing stuff like what you're doing. Talk to us about what that is. You didn't have one. Again, lack of preparation. Again, don't try this at home sort of scenario.
Definitely.
Do your research. So yeah, what is a tourniquet for those that don't know?
So a tourniquet is it's a medical device that you would use to stop the bleeding when you've lost limbs due to missile attacks, heavy artillery shells or anything like that. Something I was totally unprepared for. I'll hold my hand up and say my first time going to the trenches in Ukraine, I was beforehand, luckily I was made aware of it, but I was unprepared. And this is something this is why it's super important to have a community around you that can teach you these things. But I didn't have one, and I remember texting the guy the night before, and he was saying, "Have you got your med pack and your tourniquet?" And I'm looking in my bag with about 4 plasters and some paracetamol, and I'm like, "What? This is
Googling what is a tourniquet pack whilst
like,
in Ukraine." Yeah,
and
crazy.
it was stupid on my own part, and you make those mistakes. But luckily, I went in the morning and got my med packs and everything a few hours before, and now I'm prepared for anything pretty much.
So you've left the apartment, you're at the media hub, or whatever that's called. Is that press hub, media hub?
Yeah.
And you've just said then, I was in the trenches. How do you get from the apartment in like the almost normal living environment to then going into the trenches? What's the logistics surrounding that? I mean, you're not booking an excursion online, are you? Are you having help from someone? Are you asking someone for a lift? I mean, talk to me about that.
So I just like that was probably the most fearful few moments of my life. Beforehand, you sort of in contact with military personnel in the area that you're going to be documenting. They have, so the military regiments, a lot of them have someone who specifically deals with media inside those. So I was working with a called 13th Cartier Brigade in Ukraine, and they had a guy, I'm not going to say his name for security reasons, but he was my fixer, and he picked me up from a shop. I had to get a taxi to Saltivka, which, if anyone knows, Saltivka in Kharkiv is one of the worst parts of the city. The whole city, a lot of it is destroyed. I pick you up from the shop, and then it was me, a Spanish journalist, two other journalists in the boot, Ukrainians, and then the captain, the commander of that regiment, and then his next, and they were driving us through no man's land, which is the area. You sort of have the city centre in Kharkiv, and you have the outskirts, and when you get out of that, that's when it's like no civilian cars.
Yeah, it must just be you must just see this gradual, as you're going down the journey along the road, this gradual, right, okay, there's people, there's less people, there's no people.
It goes quiet.
There's no buildings.
Yeah.
The first time ever doing that, you must be thinking, like, can we do a U-turn now, please? Again, part of you's thinking, I'll get the next plane out, as opposed, and the other part of you, the camera on the other shoulder's going, go and get the shots, man.
Yeah.
And you were determined, obviously, because you did it. We'll try and chuck some photos up if we can. Don't know what that noise is either. If that's coming through the microphone, it sounds like a drone. I think onto you.
We'll go on those soon.
But yeah, so your first time going into the trenches, let's say.
Yeah.
Like, how does that feel? I mean, are you even aware of it? Is it a blur? Are you aware of this? I mean, are you really aware of it, or are you just in journalism mode? Do you know what I mean?
It was a bit of both. I think one part of me wasn't scared because I was so excited to finally be there. I think I'd done 4 or 5 war zones before this, so building up to the eventual point of going to the front lines, I was like, I'm so excited to finally be here. My brain was in there like, yeah, I can't wait to get there. But then another part was like looking out the window, listening for drones, because the boys were telling us on the way there, this is the most dangerous part of going to the trenches. It isn't being in the trenches, it's getting to the trenches. Because in Ukraine, that's where the drones hang out. They'll be waiting for your car to go round to your position, drop it, and then game over. So that was pretty scary, yeah.
I don't really want to touch upon it because it might be an obvious answer to the question. But are you seeing lots of bodies?
It's hard with the body situation because generally, unless you're there when the missile attack happens, pretty soon after the bodies are gone. So the whole photography work you see by a lot of journalists of bodies, generally that's because they were there in an immediate, and I suppose when a missile lands, within minutes sometimes there's rescues, police on site within sometimes 5 to 10 minutes, sometimes it's pretty fast generally. So unless you're notified, you do see it sometimes if you're in the area where there are some, but generally they're gone pretty fast. But
I wanted to ask the question, you had no pre-war training, education, except I guess Google and YouTube. And I don't think you've had any post-war. I mean, is there I don't know, what are they, not like a rehabilitation thing. I don't think you've seen too much, but
yeah,
if in those scenarios, where are you drawing the line then between getting the shot off, because it might be quite powerful.
Yeah.
It's a shot that's not, we see that often, as opposed to exploiting a situation and making it someone who's vulnerable. Do you know what I mean? Like, where can you draw the line? Or it must be very difficult not to point the camera up and shoot something that's rare. Do you know what I mean?
It is, yeah. Ukraine was a little bit different because a lot of the stuff I was doing was pre-planned. So the military that I was with were aware that I was going to photograph them. So from that point of view, you're okay. You don't mind doing that. The bit that draws the conflict in my mind for me was Syria. That was the biggest one for me because as many of you may be aware, a few months ago, rebel forces toppled the regime out there. So there's now no longer a government. Well, I think there's an interim government now as we speak. But yeah, that was harder. You're looking at these children that are homeless, that are totally deprived. That's the main one for me as children, is they're so innocent to the situations, and they've been dragged into something that they never wanted to be a part of. We were up in the slums sort of area of Damascus, up in the north in the mountains of Syria, and there was just children playing with AK-47 shells, guns going off, and you're there taking that picture, but you just feel like so exploitative.
So when you mentioned, I'm asking about close calls. I mean,
Yeah.
Ukraine, you just thought would have been, but they were pre-planned as such, I guess. So they wouldn't. There might not have been too many, although a few kilometers
Yeah.
in meters really is pretty close.
Yeah.
But you said you weren't welcome in either Syria or Lebanon. So any close, like when you say you're not welcome, I mean, what are they? Is it just swearing? Are they? Is it eggs? Do you know what I mean? Are they throwing punches at you? Are they? What wasn't welcoming about it?
It was Lebanon. That was the one place where the people were just really, a lot of the people were really hostile to me. There was a lot of nice people there, don't get me wrong, they were, but there was one scenario where I had come across an area and it was a block of residential flats that had just taken an Israeli bomb, and it was just destroyed. And I was there taking photographs, and speaking to some of the younger children there, just asking like, how you doing, what's been going on, like trying to see their point of view and just the general living and just exploring and understanding. And there was an older man who come over to me swearing, why are you here, what are you doing, where are you from? Probably maybe shouldn't have told him I was British, but I don't like lying to people. I'm not that, I'm not a lying person. So I said I'm British. I'm here to just sort of tell your story, understand what you're going through, make people aware of wars and what's going on. And he just didn't want to hear it, and he was up in my face, screaming, swearing, spitting. Like, yeah.
Are you with a fixer at this point? You're on your own. Yeah. Oh, okay, so quite scary then, yeah.
Yeah. This is going to sound really silly, but for anyone who's not aware, there's a photographer called Trevor Wisecup, who is a New York street photographer, and he posts a lot of videos of de-escalations of him shooting someone and their reaction to the situation and how to de-escalate it. And I watched a lot of him before, so I'm sort of trying to prepare myself for that eventual moment, and reasoning with the man and giving him a bit of space, and we got it to de-escalate after a while, but he was not happy at all. Yeah, it was pretty worrying.
And where would you stay in somewhere like Syria or Lebanon? Again, I'm doubting Airbnb online for those places.
It's so crazy.
And have you booked beforehand, or are you just turning up hoping that someone takes you in and feeds you? Because again, I can't imagine that you can walk into too many restaurants. Do you know what I mean? You can't walk into a McDonald's and get a cheeseburger. So how you eating over there, feeding yourself, and where you sleeping?
So generally, your fixer will sort most of that out. They they plan your hotels. They generally plan a lot of the food, like they'll know good spots to go to and stuff like that. It's sort of like having a friend who knows the area and who's been to all the places, and they're like, yeah, that's a good place. Let's go grab some food in there. But it's just not. It's totally documentary photography and photojournalism is a world which is amazing. But there are people who, unlike me, will lie to exaggerate the truth in a lot of circumstances. And I know that person. I will just say how it was and my experiences. And a lot of journalists out there, especially the ones that have been out there, they'll say, oh, it was the worst country in the world. It was desolate. It was this, it was that. But the ultimate reality of it was they're normal humans. They got to live. They got to survive. And there are places to go and eat, and there are places, and people are getting on with their lives in a lot of places. Some of them not so much. There are, as you get further north into Homs and stuff, that's another level. But yeah, a lot of the fixers sort it, and people get on with their lives. You know what I mean? Wars is fascinating. It's fascinating because the places you expect to be the worst are never the worst, and the places you expect to be the opposite is always the opposite. Everything I've found. The places I expected to feel the least safe, I felt the most safe. and the places I expected not. Do you know what I mean? It's fascinating.
Do you think the media play a part in that?
Yeah.
So so they put it on. Well, we all know the media anyway is exaggerated and sometimes and lie most of the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wonder if that's part of it. You've already made in your head. You've made your mind up how this place is going to be.
Yeah.
How you have to act. How they might act towards you.
Yeah.
And it's completely just not the case.
Yeah, so this was one story of a situation like that. So when I was going into Syria, we had to drive for a 2 hours through the Syrian mountains, through Lebanon and stuff over in. And the first time we got to the border, I got turned away because of my tattoos. I've gone a lot covered, but I have a throat and ears and stuff. And they said no, they didn't like my tattoos, didn't like the way I looked. Very religious country, very Islamic. So out of respect, I go back, cover all my tattoos up with makeup remover, and try it again. And told them, I said, I'll cover up and stuff. And when I got in there, I was expecting everyone beforehand would want me cover your tattoos up. They'll do this to you, they'll do that to you. And the youngsters loved them. They loved them. They were fascinated. So I got approached by two Tahrir al-Sham, which is the Islamic rebels that have taken over Syria. And I was in a mosque and I had my tattoos covered out. And they came over to me with AK-47s and balaclavas. And I'm there, white Welsh boy with a camera thinking, oh my God, this is it. I'm going to prison. They're going to lock me up. And they said, oh, tattoos, no, haram. And I said, sorry. And they went, joking. And Adam played a joke with me. And I was like, wow, this is insane.
Yeah.
And it was like, and these people,
that's incredible.
They're menacing looking. They got their balaclavas, their Kalashnikovs. They look scary. To a Westerner, they look scary. And they were like, and I was like, wow. And they were super cool. It was crazy.
Yeah. Those stories. This is it. Yeah. It ends up just being some banter.
Yeah, and it was.
Yeah, because you must come against, this is the culture. They don't have the tattoos and everything else. You stand out, and for whatever reason, religious reasons.
Yeah.
They had that laugh with you. That's funny.
It was crazy.
So you've had men approach you in balaclavas with AK-47s. You've been in the trenches in Ukraine. Yeah. Argued with an old man in Lebanon. How far are you willing to go as a war? I mean, it's an extreme sport, isn't it? And like you said yourself earlier, those bombs or missiles landing in Ukraine, even after the short period of time you were there, were normal.
Yeah,
they were normal. So I guess as a war photographer, you're chasing something out of the ordinary, because otherwise you'd be shooting the streets of Newport.
Yeah,
you fancied the war zone. Is there a part of you that just wants? It's a human instinct, I think. Anyway, you're just going to want more. How far are you willing to go with it?
All the way. Honestly, all the way. I just haven't got half-assed in my nature, and I'm willing to just push it as far as, and not even in a silly way as well. I think as I go along, the more dangerous it gets, the more planning is prepared. But ultimately, I never see the photographs. I see humans, and I think, it's worrying for me to go there, but they have to live that. And a lot of the time, a lot of these people are just youngsters like me, who just want to go out and play with their mates and go for a burger or whatever they want to do. And it doesn't matter if you're in Syria or Africa or Afghanistan. Most of these kids are just normal kids. They just want to have a normal life. And I've got the privilege of being able to come back to a pretty safe, decent country. So there isn't really any way that I'm not willing to take it. I'm willing to go as deep. And there was a photographer who said, go into stories is like peeling back the layers of an onion. And the real stories are at the core of that onion. And it's just peeling back those layers and getting deeper and deeper inside. And there are points where you go, this is dangerous and a stupid kind of dangerous. Let's not go down that alleyway because I'm not coming back out. But I'm willing to go further. Yeah, definitely.
In the short space of time you've been doing it, lack of preparation, zero experience.
Definitely.
What would you have done differently?
That's a really good question. I would. It's hard to say what I would have done differently because I am who I am, and for me, sometimes just going. If I don't just go and do it, I'll sit and ponder and say, "Oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it," and then I never end up getting around to do it. So I'm pretty happy with the way I've done it, leading up to it. The only thing I would say, looking into the camera, if anyone is wanting to do this, is there is a thing called a HEFAC course, which is hostile training and awareness and medical first aid and tourniquet. They'll do that. Do that. I'm in the process of doing it now through. It's called the Rory Peck Trust, which offers this service to young freelance photojournalists in war zones. That is what I would do differently. If I could go back, just do that from the start, just to have a little bit more preparedness. Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Well, for those on YouTube listening, and I don't know if it works on Spotify too, but we'll chuck links below.
Cool. Yeah.
Tourniquets,
Yeah.
hostile training,
Yeah.
Instagram accounts, which just sounds pathetic.
The Frontline Club. Yeah.
Frontline club stuff, but yeah, we'll chuck it all in. But you don't know who's watching this to going, well, if Cameron can do it, I can do it. Yeah. And again, it's that don't try this at home scenario. Not everyone can do it. Otherwise, we'd all be doing it. Do you know what I mean? It's that scenario. I'll just ask you another question. I got two more questions for you, actually. You're 23 years old. You've seen some things that none of us will ever see in our lives already.
Yeah.
How do you think it's affected you personally, and how you see the world? Is it different now as opposed to 6-7 months ago?
Totally. Could not be even remotely the same at all. Some things. Mentally, I feel okay. I feel pretty good, to be honest with you. I'm young. It may catch up to me when I'm older. But right now, I feel okay. But it's more so just my general perspective of life just totally changes. I just think I just learned to just take a step back and realise that don't be in such a rush. Sometimes just enjoy it. Just enjoy leaving out here and going for a walk down the road.
Yeah, that's
because
beautiful, man.
there's people who ain't got that. They ain't got the just the simple things. Just enjoy the simple things. You don't need the £40,000 car. You don't need a lot of things that are unneeded. A lot of things that I thought I needed being younger, trying to fit in clothes. And you go to these countries and you realise you give a kid a drink or a pack of crisps and it's like you've just handed them a pot of gold. And you realise what really matters is like the human connections and meeting people and just sometimes taking a step back to just think we're here in a place that's safe, we're happy. Let's just enjoy it.
Cameron, what's next? What is next? Dare I even ask? What's next?
I've been doing some planning to go down to cover the conflicts in Africa next, which is I've been up at the Frontline Club in London to some lectures on the wars in Sudan and the Congo. There's a lot of the Boko Haram and the insurgencies of the Islamic State in Somalia, so it's going to be down that area. Which country specifically yet I'm not 100% sure, but that's what's next for me is down there in that area of the world.
And do you fear PTSD or I don't know, mental health issues later on? I mean, I know you're strong-minded now. You're young, and I did meet your mum, and I think it was your auntie.
Yeah.
Maybe just a few days ago, and so you've got this network around you that is beautiful.
Yeah.
And they're really good, obviously really good for you. They know the score.
Yeah.
That will help, obviously. But do you fear what you might see and how it'll change you, or is it just a job? I mean, can you switch off?
I'm lucky that I right now have the ability to switch off. That's there, this is here. I don't mix the two worlds. If people want to know about it, I'll speak to them about it. Yeah, I think one day it may catch up to me, but it's just super important, like you said, to have a network of people around you and to be able to speak about things if you feel about them. Don't feel like embarrassed about going to therapy, just to go and offload some of your problems if you need to. But for me, I sort of got disillusioned in a way by the idea of this macho man in a war. You see the old pictures of McCullen in the Congo wearing a linen shirt with 2 cameras wrapped around each arm. And at the start, I'm not an impulsive, silly person in a lot of ways. I do like to plan things out. But at the start, I was sort of like, yeah, I saw that. I was like, yeah, I can do it. Chuck my top on and get out there. But now I'm sort of starting to understand it's not that easy. Going away a bit less, taking my time with planning, and if it catches up to me one day,
So be it.
so be it.
Yeah, you did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing, man. I think that comes. Well, I don't know if you want to add anything. I got no more questions. I mean, what a conversation, man. I didn't. It's great. We only met a week ago, man, and it
Yeah.
was. I'm really looking forward to following your journey, see where it takes you. Gosh, what is wild for me? It's just wild.
There is something I would like to add, and it's something that I would like for people to be aware of. I think when people see me doing this, they look at me as some stupid, reckless 23-year-old who's watched a couple of crazy videos on YouTube and wants to go out and take photos in war zones. But that isn't the case at all. And maybe I should have added this at the start, so I hope people see this. But that's never been what it's been about for me. There's a photographer called Tim Hetherington who approached wars in a totally different way, and his way of photographing wars wasn't to photograph the guns and the bullets, but to photograph the communities and the people that shape these countries. And for me, this isn't about being a crazy kid with a camera, even though that's quite fun too, but it's about really connecting parts of the world with people here and showing the personal and intimate lives of people affected by wars, and really exploring stories and creating relationships with people from a really professional but kind standpoint. And it's about being prepared, doing it the right way, and sharing with the world the things that go on from a professional standpoint as well.
Man, that's beautiful. What an ending or cut off to the conversation.
Yeah.
I'll quickly look into the camera here and just say, thanks for watching. If you made it this far, that's amazing. We're brand spanking new. This on assignment conversation series. The YouTube channel will be full of stuff, photo related, art, creativity, filmmaking. That was amazing, man.
enjoyed that.
I'm super happy. Do you know what's funny? And I'll just say this: when I had the idea for this, these conversations, I was thinking to myself, I'm going to get the legends in, man. The boys with the men and women with experience. They've been there, done it, and I'm sat here with you. 7 months experience, but we've just had 53 minutes, and we could talk forever, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And there'll be loads more after this. We go, oh my God, we didn't even mention that.
Loads, yeah.
But again, thanks for coming on. I hope you've inspired. I hope you've educated. All links will be in descriptions wherever you see this conversation. Like, subscribe, all the good stuff. We want to bring in more people like Cameron to have these conversations. And Cameron, maybe we catch up in 6 months, 12 months. We do it all again. New stories, new locations, new close calls. It'd be amazing, man. Everyone, thanks for watching. Lovely.
Thank you very much.